You're listening to Infertility Bites. This is a catharsis podcast. Infertility bites, but it bites a bit less when you're not alone. My name is Casey, and as always, I'm blessed to be joined by my co-captain in this journey, my wife, Sarah.
Hello.
On this series, we're going to talk about our experiences dealing with infertility. It's important to note that we are not doctors or even, air quotes, experts. We're just people who understand how difficult it can be and how lonely it can be. Each person's journey is unique, like a fingerprint, so it's best to leave the medicine to the professionals. Previously on this, we've talked about our troubles getting answers in our hometown of Kearney, eventually getting referred to a specialist here in Omaha, and then figuring out how to pay for it. This time, I kind of want to talk about things that we weren't prepared for, like things that we weren't told ahead of time. Kind of the biggest one, I think I've mentioned this on previous podcasts. I don't think anyone really tells you in a way that you fully understand how fast things can move sometimes.
Yeah, that's how it was for us, because we had our first appointment in early February with Dr. Delaney, and by end of May we were doing our second. They were implanting me.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So to me that's fast, considering we've been trying for 7-8 years.
And yes, I fully understand that for a lot of people it might not move quite that fast. We were fortunate enough to have a diagnosis that was relatively easy for them to come up with a plan. We didn't, since we'd already done 6 years of other stuff, we didn't suffer a whole lot of hurdles in that.
Yeah. I have a feeling that would have been, if we'd have been just a year into trying, I think they would have probably been like, let's do this and this first. So,
and like I said, our ages definitely played into it a bit. I'm especially my age, and not saying that I'm ancient by any means, but at the time of this, I was 38, and I have a feeling that the doctor kind of was like, let's not mess around too much, let's get straight to it. But it's not even the total length of stuff going so fast. It's when things start going, they go fast, right? You might be doing testing for months, doing shots for months, and then suddenly, when they decide the time is right, they're like, we're doing an ultrasound. We see you've got enough developed follicles for us to do this. We're going to give you the trigger shot. We're going to then, since we were doing IVF, of course, they did an egg retrieval, and then the semen sample for me, and then the fertilization, and then boom boom boom, checking the results of it. Okay, we've got ones that we think we can implant, so here's your appointment on this day. And it was 5 days or 6 days after 5 days after the egg retrieval, and then it's no flexibility in that. It's like here's what happens, boom 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 boom, and hardly a chance to sit back and like really process what was going on.
Yeah. And that's why last week's episode was all about finances, because you have to have that kind of figured out, because like Casey's saying, it was just, even I look back now and I'm thinking, my gosh, I'm thrilled that it went as smoothly as it did, but it was super fast when you look back.
And it just nonstop. And then when you finally have a chance to breathe, you've got now the worry: did it work?
Yeah.
And that's another thing to kind of talk about. I don't know if anyone really truly prepared me for the stress of did it work. Don't get me wrong, for 6 years we tried, and we had plenty of stress of Sarah's late, time to take a pregnancy test, is it positive, wait for the
2 minutes.
2 minutes or 3 minutes or 5 minutes, depending
Whatever
on the test. and then see the negative result. But none of those times are quite the same as having a medical procedure where eggs are implanted in you and then having to wait for 2 weeks to find out the results of it.
Yeah.
The stress of that, because people not familiar with the way IVF has to go, or even IUI, like I said before, we didn't have to do IUI. They hotshotted us straight to IVF. I said before, I'm very thankful that they did that. I do agree with their assessment that in our situation, I feel like we would have just wasted money with IUIs. And hotshotting us straight to IVF gave us the best shot of having our little baby girl. So we didn't have to deal with that, but it's the same sort of thing with IUI. You still have that 2-week wait afterwards where you had this medical procedure, and now you have to wait to find out if it was successful. But people who aren't familiar with this don't realize that. And so Sarah was getting questions at work from coworkers.
Yeah.
As soon as the first day she was back to work after the procedure.
Yeah, people just assumed, that they put the egg inside you so you're pregnant. No, we didn't know, and that's the thing. Or people would say, "Oh, do you feel different?" I mean, it was kind of jokingly, but it also was just, very few people probably can truly understand how just stressed I was. And then you didn't want to be too stressed because that's never good for anything. So, but it didn't help. And I get it. People at work were very curious because by the time I got done and once we'd had Stella, I became like, people came up to me about random questions. So, I was fine. I could be a teacher in that, in that experience, because people I think everyone just assumed it was a turkey base. No one actually knew that there was other procedures you could get done, and but yeah.
And that's kind of the thing, is the stress of that wait. But even more, the thing that no one really tells you about ahead of time, only other people who've gone through it can truly understand. That stress doesn't go away after the 2-week wait. That stress doesn't go away after month 1 or month 2 or the end of your first trimester or, end of your second trimester. When you've experienced so much hardship getting pregnant, the stress and worry does not go away for most of the pregnancy. And again, Sarah and I were in the fortunate side. We didn't suffer, at least knowingly suffer, miscarriages. There's every chance that one of those times when Sarah was late, when she finally got her period, it was technically a silent miscarriage. We don't know.
Yeah.
We literally have no way to know. We don't knowingly know that we'd ever suffered a miscarriage. But in 6 years of trying, there's every chance that one of those times started to take and then failed. So, but a lot of people go through miscarriage after miscarriage. And for them, I can't even imagine how much even more stressful it would be, because for us, almost the entire 9 months was stress.
Yeah.
Of, is this going to happen? Is this going to happen? Is something going to suddenly take this all away from us?
Well, I think I'd even mentioned in a previous episode where I didn't want to shop for baby stuff until, we'd be walking and I'd be back 3 months along, and Casey would be like, "Do you want to go look?" And I'd be like, no, it's too early. I want to say around 6 months, 7 months.
About 6 months, I think you finally decided.
I would walk in and we would just kind of look, but not to get, too excited, because, and of course I'm kind of a pessimistic, yes. I always think of the negatives first. So for me, it was just a very stressful time. And people really would be like, "Are you just not excited?" Because after we found out officially that we got the word from the doctors from 2 different tests that we were pregnant, and people were like, oh, you're just not super excited. I'm like, because there's so many things that could go wrong, and this was kind of our one shot. I mean, it's not like we're every Joe Schmo that, oh, well, we lose this baby, and 3 months we'll try again and we'll get pregnant right away. I mean, that just wasn't an option for us. So it's a very different, surreal feeling that, I mean, millions of people experience. They just feel like you're by yourself.
Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the thing is you feel so alone through this entire procedure that even knowing that what we know now, that millions of people in America every year deal with this, you feel so alone. And that the stress just doesn't seem to go away. And both Sarah and I are members of a couple different infertility forums on Facebook, and that's the reoccurring thing that I hear from a lot of people, is that just constantly fear that it's going to go south. Doesn't matter whether they're waiting for their first test after their procedure or whether they're 2 months along. Every little thing causes extra stress.
I was okay. I probably don't really recommend this, but we bought a heart monitor, not a baby heart monitor.
Mm-hmm. I do recommend it, personally, but a lot of doctors do say be careful.
Well, I should say maybe a higher end. We didn't get like the super nicest one, but I remember there was one time when I had to be at least 8 months along, and we could hear the heartbeat. It was really faint, and then it just kind of went away. And I mean, me and Casey just kind of looked at each other, and there was just literally panic and fear. And we were like 2 days away from our next appointment, and we're just like, okay, this doesn't mean anything. But I mean, I remember going to bed thinking, was that it? Was that my baby's last heartbeat? I didn't,
Mm-hmm.
we kept trying to find another heartbeat, and we weren't successful.
Yes. There's benefits and cons to buying one of these. Like Sarah said, it wasn't the most expensive one. It wasn't super nice, but I think it did the job. However, and doctors will tell you this, that our untrained ears aren't good enough to know what to listen for. So it's easy for us as protective wannabe parents to try to analyze the sounds that we hear in ways that aren't clinically diagnostic. So if you do get a heartbeat monitor, fetal heartbeat recorder, any of those things, just keep in mind that what you're getting it for is the comfort of hearing a heartbeat, but also know that there are a lot of things that can play into whether you can hear a heartbeat, and these consumer grade things aren't strong enough to get in there and hear heartbeats at every time. You sometimes have to push really hard and push around to find a place for it, and if baby decides to roll over on her back or her side or stick her butt in the air at the time that you're doing it, then suddenly you don't get a heartbeat. But that plays into the worry, I really didn't talk too much with Sarah about this, but I know she's aware of it. But I have a brother who, him and his wife suffered a loss of a baby pretty far along in the pregnancy, due to no fault of anyone's, due to just bad luck, effectively. And the entire pregnancy in my brain was, this could happen to our baby. And not saying that other parents don't worry about it, but when you've invested $25,000 in
the hopes
of having a baby, that constant fear of, will this just go away on us? Because we talked about how we financed it and taking out a second mortgage on our house. There was no option for third mortgage. It was our one shot at at doing this, and if it was unsuccessful, it was going to be a long time before we could afford to even do frozen embryo transfer, which are cheaper than straight IVF, but they're still thousands of dollars that we weren't sure we could justify again, right? So there's that, the worry continues for the entire pregnancy. No matter how many appointments you have where the doctor says everything looks great, no matter how many ultrasound pictures that you come home with that show, here's their features, here there's looking at you smiling or whatever, the worry stays, and no one really talks about it in advance. No one tells you that. And so it's definitely something to be prepared for. If you are in the early stages of fertility treatment, just do understand it's normal to be worried. Yeah. It is normal. You are your best advocate, and if you feel extreme stress about something, if you feel like something's off, then talk to your doctor about it. Period. Right? Don't ever worry that you're bugging your doctor.
Yeah.
If you feel like something's off with the baby, call your doctor. It's normal to be stressed about this, and this is something you worked harder than most have had to, and so understand that you're going to be worried. But if everything goes right, the worry will be worth it. Another thing that I wasn't prepared for ahead of time, and I'll put this out there to other people, be prepared in your circle of friends to suddenly become the infertility expert. Where everyone comes up, people you hardly knew will come up and ask you about infertility and ask you about this and that, because so many people suffer through it silently that the knowledge of it's just not out there. And like Sarah said, a lot of people think the turkey baster method is the way that it is. And so no matter what you tell them that you're going through, until you explain to them how scientific the procedures are, because even IUI, it's jokingly called the turkey baster method, but it is way more...
you still have shots, you still do things,
way more in-depth than just a turkey baster, right? Even surrogacy, even if the infertility is not caused by the person, right? Say it's a same-sex couple, or a couple where the woman can't bear a child, so they go through a surrogate. In any of those situations, right, it's still more complex than just here, we're gonna squirt some semen into the girl and she'll get pregnant. That's what people think is what happens, but that's not what happens. And to be perfectly honest, I'd love to at some point on this hear from someone out there who either is dealing with being a surrogate themselves or going through surrogacy for their own baby. We so far have not had any tales of surrogacy, whether it's same-sex couple, whether it's female fertility or hysterectomy, something like that. We haven't had one of those tales yet, and I would really like to kind of pick the brain of someone who's gone through that a bit and hear what their story differs from everyone's. Because, like I said, every one of these stories is unique, but that's a twist on it that we didn't have to experience for any reason. And so, but it's way more complex than what people just think it is. And so suddenly you'll have people come up and start asking you some very personal questions that they would never have thought about asking you before they found out that you were dealing with fertility. And so just be prepared. Once it's out there and people know that you're going through treatment for fertility, you will be the person people turn to with questions about it. And even people not going through fertility themselves will just have questions like, oh my goodness, what's it like? Or like Sarah was saying, as soon as we had the procedure, they'll be like, oh, is it successful? And then you have to explain to them that, well, this was just the egg retrieval, so we won't have the implantation till later this week.
We have to let the eggs and everything.
Once they're in there, once the eggs are implanted, we still won't know if either of them took for at least 2 weeks. So those are all things that people will ask you questions about. Don't be surprised by it. Don't be taken off guard by it. Embrace this, because this is your chance to help other people realize how much more common this is than...
Just broaden their horizons, basically.
And both of us have told stories, I think, before on this. We've mentioned it. But both of us had people that we worked with that we might not have really even known very well at all. Had some conversations with, but not really known. That once they found out what we were going through, suddenly came up to us and confided in us that they were going through the same thing, but silently, that they hadn't come out publicly about it, that they were just taking it all internally. And some of them were struggling even harder than we ended up. Sarah had a former coworker who had multiple...
Well, since I don't technically have her story, but I just wanted we would talk, because once she found out about me, then we just started talking all the time. But she would become pregnant, but then it just like her body would then eventually just reject it, and for her, she was considerably older. And so that, didn't play. And same with her husband, because her husband was even older than her. And so, but just the things they went through, and they went through multiple places. And they eventually, and I'm glad I could share my story, because she went through Methodist, and that's where it did take, which is a wonderful, wonderful thing. But she also had to go through 2 things at Methodist. So it wasn't even, and it's times like that when you're like, that just shows you how much people truly, really want a baby. Because, I don't know how much it was. I can guess how much it was, close to around at Methodist, because we went through Methodist. But I don't know about the other place, how much they charged. Luckily for her, she's got a wonderful story, wonderful ending.
She does have a wonderful ending to it, although not without its own trials and tribulations. And so maybe someday she'll bless us with the ability to tell her tale. But yeah, be prepared to, once other people know what you're going through, which we've mentioned before for us. It was very public because we did do a GoFundMe. So everyone on our friends list on Facebook knew about it. Everyone that we worked with ended up knowing about it. It was a very public thing. It's not like it was in the paper or anything. Basically, everyone we knew about it. Might as well have been.
Yeah, it might as well. It's the size of our town.
But so it became this where basically everyone came and asked us whether they were just curious or whether they were going through. I had a coworker who was going through very similar to us, very similar situation. Her husband's older than her, and so on and so forth, and they were having a lot of trouble conceiving, and they were, they came to me and started talking about it, and our story helped inspire them to talk to more doctors and all this. And in the end, they didn't end up needing to have medical procedure. They ended up having a baby naturally, and actually have since had another baby. So, but just, I think, knowing someone else who had gone through it that they could talk to about it maybe even just helped them relax enough about things that nature was able to work. But just be prepared, because people will have a lot of questions for you about it. And then maybe a final thing. I don't know, maybe we'll come up with more things after I talk about this one, but a final thing I don't think anyone prepares you for is the desire is not going to go away if it's successful, right? Sarah and I have our beautiful, wonderful, perfect little angel baby who threw an absolute fit trying to go to bed tonight and did not want to go to bed. Nope. But she's still our perfect angel. And we have a success story about it, but that doesn't mean we're done, that the desire has gone away. We want to try again. We would love to try again. Right now, financially, it's not in the cards. Yeah. Down the road, maybe finances will change. Maybe we'll do another GoFundMe. Maybe we'll do something else to try again. But at the moment, financially wise, it's not in the cards for us. But that doesn't change the fact of how much we want one.
Yeah.
And so just even with success doesn't necessarily change things. And that's something that they don't talk about. It's not like you get your magic baby and then suddenly all the worry and all the stress and all of the stuff that led you to be so stressed out about not having a baby goes away. It's just replaced, it's just augmented with more stress about how to raise a baby and then also still wanting a baby. And so it's kind of crazy, but they don't really talk about it like future planning. There's never a point in this where they're like, hey, after this is successful, what's next?
Yeah.
They're just focusing on getting this to be successful. What happens next is going to be the next decision for you guys. So, but just understand this is a journey. At times it's a sprint and at times it's a marathon, but you're not going through it alone, and millions of people are dealing with it. And you always have people to turn to and find a support community, whether it's on Facebook or Twitter or some other thing, TikTok. Find a support community, find a group of people that you can talk to about it. You can always message us through Infertility Bites on Facebook, and we will respond.
Yes.
And we will send baby dust vibes to you, because we want everyone to be successful.
Well, yeah, that's truly what it comes down to. I mean, just want people to have the same feeling that we have.
Yes.
And so, yeah.
And that's the purpose of this podcast, is to help other people know that they're not alone and they've got a support system. And I mean, we can recommend you to some of the support systems that we are members of on Facebook. And we can talk to you about it. We'll have more than happy to be an ear for you to lean on, shoulder for you to lean on, an ear to listen. That's the way this saying goes, I guess.
I don't know.
But I did think of one more thing that no one prepares you for. And this is getting into a little darker territory. But no one prepares you before, when you're talking about infertility and all that stuff. No one prepares you for abortion talk.
Oh, yeah. Because that was one of the
very first meetings you will likely have with a fertility specialist, whether you're talking about IUI or IVF or any of that, is they will likely talk to you about...
Because you are their patient, so you're their priority.
And this might not go for every hospital or every doctor.
That's true.
If you're going through a religious organization, they probably won't talk about this specifically, but they did specifically talk to us about it, where they said that we need to be prepared to make some tough choices potentially. If for whatever reason we have multiples, and there's a health problem with one of them, We might have to make the decision to
Yeah.
end one of the pregnancies so that the other one can survive, or the other two, or whatever.
Well, yeah, most of these were about having more than 2 kids. Like if you were pregnant with 4 or 5.
If the health of the mother was in danger purely from the baby or multiple babies, we had to be prepared to make these tough decisions. And they flat out said, if you're not ready to make that decision, then maybe this isn't for you.
And looking back now, I don't know if I would have been able to make that decision.
I don't know if I would have either.
Because, it's easy to say, oh, yeah, no, totally, yeah, I'll make a decision.
Mm-hmm.
But if it would have come to that, that would have been a very... I don't even... My heart goes out to people that ever would have to make that decision.
Yes. But it did kind of take me off guard, because
yes,
when you're in this whole thought process of fertility, how do we have a baby? You don't expect there to be a conversation about not having the baby.
And a lot of it was with the IUI, because people assumed with IVF that's where the multiples came in, but really it's the IUIs that
most common in.
That is most common to have multiples. And so that's one thing people kept coming up to me. They're like, oh, are you going to have like 5 babies? I'm like, nope, that'd be IUIs. That's not IVF. IVF, you can.
There's a chance. Here's the deal.
Not as likely.
So, grand scheme of things, IVF, they implant 1 or 2. I don't know of too many clinics that do more than 2 potential. A lot of them only want to do 1 at a time. But they implant 1 or 2 fertilized eggs and hope that one of them takes. There is always a chance that either both of them take, or that one of them takes and twins, or both of them take and twins, or triplets, So there is always a chance, but it's not drastically higher than standard
chances.
It's a little higher, but not a lot higher. But IUI, because what with IUI's whole deal is to stimulate production of eggs, and then stimulate the releasing of eggs, and then introduce the semen where they have the best shot of fertilizing the eggs. You don't have control over how many eggs are dropped. In fact, they try to make you drop as many eggs as possible just to make it as successful as possible. So there's a good chance that more than one egg fertilizes, and that's where chances of twinning goes up. Now again, it's not like it used to be. 30 years ago, these procedures, cutting edge at the time, were way more likely to produce multiples than they are today, but it still is a chance. But that's why I say it's one of those things that they don't tell you about in advance. They don't warn you, by the way, you're going to talk about abortion in this. It's just kind of brought up that you might have to make this call, and so you don't think to expect it, because you're thinking all about the positive sides, and suddenly you have to confront dark stuff.
But I kind of appreciate it. We can only speak for Methodists, but their honesty, even just about the percentage of success rates there, and just because I think, what was it, 60%?
They said that with our conditions, they were averaging close to 60% success rate.
That's still, still 40% of people, it does not succeed, which is still a lot of percent. That's,
I always say, if you were in Vegas and you had $25,000 and you could put it all on a spin of a wheel, and there were 100 openings on the wheel, and 40 of them you got to win your money back plus some extra money. Or 60 of them you got to win your money back plus some extra money, but 40 of them you lost all your money. Most people wouldn't really take that bet, even though it's slightly in your favor, they'd still say, it's not worth it. I'm losing $25,000 on a single spin. And that's what we had to do with this. And so, but no, I 100% agree. Methodists being honest up front, and I'm much happier with them presenting this as a rare but potential thing that we might have to deal with in advance, rather than just hot-shotting through it and ignoring it, and then potentially blindsiding us with, hey, there's a problem. You need to make a decision about abortion right now.
Yeah.
Without us being advised about it in advance. So there's that. I give them a lot of credit, but just keep in mind that there's a good chance that you'll have to at some point confront that. Usually relatively early on. Now, there's an advantage that you can have, especially if you're going through IVF, called pre-genetic implantation screen, pre-genetic screen. I gotta remember what it's called. Where they can screen the parents for certain genetic conditions, and based on the results of that, they can know chances of certain things like spina bifida. And in our case, we had Sarah screened first, and because she came back not carrying any of the markers for any of the major conditions they were screening for, they knew they didn't have to screen me, because even if I was a carrier of them, we wouldn't have a child with it. At worst, they would be a carrier. But knowing in advance, there's a lot of things they can now do. If we had both came back as carriers of spina bifida or something like that, they would know that there's further genetic testing that they could do on the eggs and all that stuff to make sure that gene wasn't being passed on, because that's a dangerous thing and something you don't want to deal with. So but yeah, I mean, that's a thing that I just wasn't prepared for. No one warned me about it.
No.
So, but we would like to hear from you guys. If you have something that in your journey you were not prepared for, hit us up on Facebook, facebook.com/infertilitybites, or our Gmail, infertilitybytespodcast@gmail.com. I'm also on Twitter, infertilitypod on Twitter. So hit us up on any of those. Our DMs are open. Our messages are open on Facebook. Send us a message and let us know what you were not prepared for on your journey, because I'm sure we've only scratched the surface of the things that people weren't told about before they started.
Yeah.
And we'd like to hear from you. We'll update on a future podcast anything that we've heard. We got a story to tell tonight of another person. This is kind of an interesting one because she is from fairly far away from us. It shows the reach of the podcast so far, and I'm really excited from this. Her name is Marina, and she's from Croatia.
Ooh, hi Marina.
Yeah, so quite a ways away from Omaha, Nebraska. Marina has a blog where she talks a lot about this, so she's already fully capable of telling her own tale. So it's a short story for us, but it's a long story for her. They've been trying for a long time. They tried for 5 years before they were able to get their first baby, and another 2 before they were able to get their second baby. So they've been successful twice, but it was not an easy procedure. She actually has a blog, like I mentioned. It's a mum2mum.com. You can go there, and she's got a bunch of posts about it. So you can read her blog posts about her 2 magical IVF and ICSI girls. You can go to mum2mum.com and read them. I'm going to have the links to the exact blog posts where she talks about each of these things. But it's a wonderful story from Croatia that does have some hiccups that, we're not used to here, and some wonderful things, because in Croatia it's covered apparently.
Wow, that's awesome.
So her treatments weren't mortgage inducing like ours were. I always ask the question, have you encountered anything that made you feel alone, overwhelmed, or anything during the way? And she says what made her feel alone is that no one knew what we were going through. So sometimes she did feel lonely and judgmental from others saying, what are you waiting for? That one was the worst. And I think everyone listening can probably agree that they've heard at least one point.
Yeah, you're not
someone
getting
say,
any younger.
You're not getting any younger. What are you waiting for? Do you just not want to have kids? Those are all horrible, and so I agree there. For her partner was the most supportive, constantly positive, supportive, and a smile on his face. So I think that's a reoccurring theme that we've seen here, is that while it's the woman who goes through the brunt of this, having a supportive partner or a supportive parent, someone to lean on during this is very important. So if you have a supportive partner or a supportive parent, thank them for being
a friend,
supportive, or even just a friend. Yes, someone who you can lean on and help. That's very important. Says she's so proud she has her 2 girls, but her journey has come to an end. You can read all about the reasons on her blog, but she does feel like she needs to pass on her story and support others. She remembers how much it meant to her to have the support of others, and she wants to be a part of that for others now.
Oh.
Her advice for others is just go for it and don't look back. Every failure makes you stronger, so don't wait after one happens, just move on. And I think that's a very important kind of thought process on this. It's very easy to get overwhelmed and pessimistic during this process. You have failures. We have a ton of failures. Sarah and I had 6 years of negative pregnancy results. And it's really easy to get discouraged and shut up. Now, I'm not saying don't take a break if you're really feeling like it. I'm saying you know your bodies and all that. But, get back on the horse and keep going. If at first you don't succeed. On our Facebook page, I have a little motto up on our picture that says, forget failures. And I think that's kind of an important thing with this, is that you're going to have setbacks and you're going to have failures, but you have to kind of forget them and focus on the goal, focus on the desire to get to that happy ending. Unfortunately, not everyone gets to it, but you can't let the failures stop you. And, at some point, you change paths. Maybe instead of going through IVF another round, you start looking into adoptions, or even just fostering a kid.
Yeah.
Or you look into finding a different doctor. Maybe a different clinic would be a better fit for you. We find a lot of people on the forums that we're on who say, after 3 rounds with blah blah clinic, we decided to go with XYZ clinic instead, and we were successful. Or maybe we weren't successful, but we feel better about it, and we're going to go back there again. So just keep trying. And, if you kind of forget the failures and you keep going and keep rolling with it, I think good things will come to most of you. And reach out and have support and talk about it and be open about it. I've said that my opinion is going through things alone is the hardest part about this. And so being open about it helps not just you, but everyone else through it. So talk about it with your friends and family. And if you don't feel comfortable talking about it with your friends and family, talk about it with us. Talk about it with a group on Facebook or Twitter, or create a your own private Twitter or TikTok that no one knows about and talk about it on there. Or start your own podcast and talk about it there. Because getting it out there and getting it off your chest, I think, is about the best remedy for a lot of problems with this.
Yeah. It can be a big just weight lifted off you.
A very, very big weight. So, but I think that's going to kind of bring us to the end of this week. Like I said, let us know anything that you weren't prepared for in your journey. I'd love to come back next week and talk about, so-and-so said they weren't prepared for this. It'd be great to have an entire episode where we're just reading your own things that you weren't prepared for. But like I say, we have facebook.com/infertilitybites. We have Twitter @infertilitypod. So you can find us on either of those. We've got a flow page that has links to everything. So it's flow.page/infertilitybites. Has links to all the places you can listen to this, our Facebook, our Twitter, our submission page, all of that right there. Because this show only works when listeners submit their stories. Listeners like a mum to mum from Croatia.
Yeah.
You know, getting Marina to submit is what makes this show go. So you can submit it through the submission on that flow page. It's also up on the Facebook page. It's also up on Twitter. Easy to find. And if you can't find it, just message us and I'll send you the link. But it only really works when other people submit their stories. Eventually, we hope to have this set up where we can take callers actually on the air, or at the very least interview people, so it's not just us telling their story, but them telling their story to you. We just don't currently have the equipment set up in a way that we can do that. But
yeah.
If you are enjoying this show, a review of it on whatever platform you listen to it would be really great. They really help other people find this show. Apple, the largest, their algorithm really takes positive reviews into consideration. So if you enjoy the show and you think other people could get benefit from it, please hop on to whatever platform you use and leave a like and a review of it there. That helps us out, everything. And if you are comfortable sharing this on your social media, that is the best way to support this podcast. Is just sending out a Facebook post or a tweet saying, hey, I've been listening to this podcast and I really love it. That's the best way to support us, and it takes 30 seconds and costs you $0. So we would appreciate that so much. I understand if you're not ready to share your infertility journey with other people on your Facebook or your Twitter. I get it. But if you are comfortable, we would definitely appreciate that. But for now, I think we're going to wrap things up for the week. As always, sending baby dust in every direction for everyone listening.
Yeah. Good vibes,
Very, very
prayers,
good
thoughts.
Thoughts, prayers, whatever you'd prefer to get from us, you're going to get from us. We hope everyone gets the babies of their dreams. But thanks for listening. As always, we like to let our little scientific miracle send us off with some love and kisses. So thanks for listening, and we will see you soon.
Okay, bye. I love you.
Hello.
Hello.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
It's you. Mwah. Mwah.